Hello, everybody. Happy weekend. I'm doing this on a Saturday. Today, I know that I owed this demonstration to you for Edmodo, so I am going to produce this demonstration now for the class. This is going to be the demonstration of how to do chiaroscuro in color. So as you can see over here, if I tip this back just a little bit, I am drawing these fruits set up on a blue box that I have over here on my windowsill. And I went ahead and I took care of the background. Now, because I want my fruits to stand out as being stronger, I've mutated really all of the colors in the background. So I kind of used a pale, dulled out yellow to kind of insinuate the lighting that I have going on, because the light's really that's affecting the objects the strongest is the light coming from that window. And I mutated the top of the box with a dull light shade of blue, but then I used a very deeper, darker, dull blue to show the edge of the box. So I'm going to be using the trick of controlling color intensity to enhance how three-dimensional my objects are. So I have, if you can see over here on the windowsill, I have a green apple, a strawberry, and an orange on top of this blue box, right? Now, the thing that happens with color and how I explained this in class was that when the light hits an object, where the light hits the object the strongest is where you have the most vibrant, intense, saturated color, right? Where the shadows are, the color loses intensity and becomes darker and more dull in color. And that is what helps things look as three-dimensional as possible. So I'm going to start with the orange because I already have the background figured out over here. And I'm going to show you how this is kind of done. Now, again, the term for this particular kind of painting style that we're going over is called alla prima, because you're doing it in one layer of paint and you're doing it while the paint is still wet on the page. So wetting my brush, making it damp so that I can grab the paint. The orange is orange, so I'm going to just grab some nice clean orange and I'm going to spread it on here. And I'm going to try to leave it pretty thick. And I'm going to kind of block out the general shape of the item with its main color. Now I'm not worried about chiaroscuro yet. I'm just worried about building up enough color on there that I can actually affect the way that I can mix the color right onto the paper. Again, this is called alla prima, in one layer, in the first layer, getting it all done. Okay, so I've blocked out the shape of my orange. Now, because of the lighting is actually hitting the orange the strongest right along the top of it and on the sides of it, on this side, not so much on that side, right? And the shadows are in the front and the shadows being cast forward, right? So always trying to base what I'm doing off of observation, because that's how we learn how to do these illusions. By studying nature, kind of like a scientist studies nature, we have to see how the light is actually bouncing off of all these colors, right? So I'm going to clean my brush, and since I have a really healthy amount of orange on there, I'm going to grab some blue, which is orange's complementary color, and I'm going to start mixing the blue right into the orange, where I see the shadows be the strongest. So trying to grab the color that I have here, leaving the strong orange where it needs to be. This is the darker color. It gets way darker over here. Trying to kind of build this up. I'm going to leave brush stroke behind and grab the color as I need it. This side is kind of duller because the light's more coming this way, right? So I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to mix it into this wet orange paint. And then over here, the color gets a little bit stronger, so I want to be careful not to bring it all the way over there. And we got our base of our shadow color in there, right? Now remember, for chiaroscuro to work, we need to create not only a shadow, but we also need to create a highlight, because everything that is affected by the light has to have a highlight and a shadow within the item. Okay, so I have the shadow. It's still looking pretty flat in the video because I haven't finished the illusion yet. I need to create the highlight. Now, orange is a hot color, so I can make the orange brighter by using yellow. You want to save the white for those little white reflections, those little white details that might be in the item. But here I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, kind of smack it onto the parts that look like they're the brightest, right? There's a nice little glow over here that I want to pick up, and then kind of smudging it into the healthier wet paint. I'm going to kind of blend those colors together and try to make the transition as soft as possible. Okay, now I'm noticing here that my shadow gets even darker and duller in this little bottom corner for whatever reason because of the round shape of the item. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more blue and I'm going to make this way duller. The more blue you add, the more neutralized the color becomes, and this area becomes way darker down here, right? And then that kind of blends away into the stronger color. Okay, I don't want to blend it away too much because then it all goes away. There's another kind of really kind of strong darkness right over here. So I'm using blue. I'm trying to do it with color instead of black and white. And if I'm being really truthful with myself, this middle shadow comes almost all the way to the top, right? And again, I'm using that wet paint that I have there, those layers of orange, right, to make this happen. Okay, so again, a little bit more blue, right? And over here, using my observation, I have a shadow on this side that I can kind of add, right? And that's just gonna dull out that orange and make that dull, less bright orange, right? So now I have the color of the orange itself, and I'm going to use a clean brush to kind of molest that a little bit. I think I went a little overboard. That's fine. The color of the orange itself, just putting some more orange in there to make the transition a little softer so that it still feels round, right? So now I have a more kind of like, this is the highlight that I can overemphasize with a little bit of yellow. Really the strongest, brightest orange is right here. So I'm gonna make that very yellow at the top of this thing, right? Now, because these fruits are made out of wax, and the wax in itself is quite reflective, I have little dancing like details in white, right? Little tiny reflections of where the white is kind of like highlighting that corner and stuff like that. So I'm going to show that in the drawing. So taking a small amount of white, I'm going to look over here and be like, okay, well, there is the texture of this item. And it has kind of like a bumpy texture to it. Oranges have a little bumpy texture. And it has that little bit of a glitter on it. It has a little bit of that standoutness, right? The white is also right about here, like right where the divot is on the top. So I'm gonna throw that in there and kind of, you know, allow my brush stroke to show, because brush stroke is beautiful. That's what makes the artwork yours. And that white's gonna kind of make the orange stand out. Now, if I have white, I need to balance it out with black. So I'm going to clean my brush because I don't want to make gray. White and black will make gray. And I'm going to grab an extraordinarily small amount of black and really analyze where the darkest areas are. The darkest areas are right underneath the belly, right underneath here, right? Over here, this area gets way darker than the blue can get me. And then that's really all I see as far as darkness goes. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to take that black and I'm going to mix it into these duller colors at the bottom. And I am going to balance out the values. And there you have a pretty, I'm going to add a little bit more orange to this area because I feel like it could be a little bit stronger. Trying to make that happen. And then as you keep on going, Using your observation, always using your observation. You're going a little bit of the blue because this center area, for some reason, I feel it's really dark. You know, trying to capture the reality of what we're doing here. Because again, the light is coming from behind and the shadows are in front. So this whole front area is just a little bit duller. Which means that I have to add just a little bit more black for this to stand out as being darker. Right there. And there we get kind of a three-dimensional orange. Now, you have to cast a shadow onto the object that it's sitting on, right? The shadow is coming forward, right? So I'm just gonna water down a little bit of black and do like a little bit of a glazed shadow on here, right? So you can see me kind of watering the black down. And then I'm gonna use that kind of watered down black to kind of darken up this area and show that the light is coming forward. And that this area is quite dark over here. And there you go. You get the full kind of technique, and that's what it looks like when you look at it from straight. Okay? So then I have two other objects, right? I have the green apple and the strawberry. We always paint from the background forward. That's why I had a background already set up over here, right? So little details, why not? So I already have kind of like my lighting in the background. Here I'm going to look at, I'm going to draw the apple first because the apple is behind the strawberry. Working from the background first helps you work faster and helps you fill up more of the paper more diligently, right? So the kind of green that's on the apple, it's not exactly this green. This green is kind of more of a true green. It's more of an equal amount of yellow and blue, right? This is a more yellowed green. This is a green that's a little bit brighter, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mix that green. I'm gonna take my mixture over here, make a different mixture so that I can kind of keep my true green clean just in case if I need it later, right? And then taking a healthy amount of clean yellow and kind of making my more yellowed green. And you can even go like that and be like, no, that needs even more yellow than what I put on there. So cleaning my brush. Grabbing more yellow, right? And then coming in here and just trying to make that correct green. And that's pretty close. That is right where it's supposed to be. Okay, so just like I did with the orange, I'm gonna take this yellowed green and I'm going to make my base, right? I'm gonna make my base and I'm gonna block out the basic shape of the item that I'm drawing, okay? Trying to not paint over the areas that are meant to be strawberry. Trying to do a healthy layer. You don't wanna spread it out too thin because you wanna be able to mix the colors right on top of each other. And there, just making sure that I have a nice healthy coat over the whole thing. Okay, so now looking at this now that I have the basic shape of the apple kind of covered, I'm gonna start looking for the shadows. So the strongest color on here is the yellow, is it the green? It's actually a little bit of both. So I'm going to be doing this with a little bit of a reddish purple, right? Because the red is the opposite color of the green and the violet is the opposite color of the yellow that I have in there. So if I do my shadows in a kind of almost a magenta color, that's gonna have a bigger effect on what I'm doing. Okay. So using the complementary color, trying not to use too much water, I'm gonna start looking for the shadows. So again, like the top part gets the light, but like here there's a shadow, down there there's a shadow, down the center there's a shadow, right? So now taking this green that I'm having in here and kind of mixing it up and picking up those colors, And I'm noticing now that it's drying on me for some horrid reason, but we're gonna make this work, okay? Okay, so I'm using the color to kind of show that the shadows in the center, kind of like the orange. This side's a little bit duller, so I'm just gonna grab a little bit of water and kind of blend that in there, kind of make all that dull. This side is getting a little bit more of a highlight, right? Now that is looking a little bit too magenta for me. I'm not happy with that. So if you ever make a mistake, because all artists do, you just kind of take the color that you created at the beginning and you start massaging. And once that color starts mixing in, that's going to become more of a shadow color. You start massaging that yellow green that you created at the beginning so that you can have the softer transitions, right? These really dark areas, that's actually starting to look like the right color now, right? We have the divot in the center, that's a really dark area, so I'm gonna use my magenta to come in here and make that like nice and dark, right? And then cleaning my brush and blending everything in with my yellowed green, kind of making sure that because this is a rounded object, that those transitions from one color to the other happen very softly. And doing that, you start getting a more three-dimensional shape, right? So I've done the shadows, I've shown where the darkness is, I've blended in this color to make the dull shadow color of the item, but I've left the stronger greens where the light is hitting the green, or the light is hitting the apple. Now, this yellow green has yellow in it already. If you want to make it brighter, you can use yellow, you can use a little bit of white. You need to create the highlight because we have the green in the shadow, but we don't have the highlight. Right now the light is hitting around the ridge at the top of this thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my yellow, I'm gonna grab my white, I'm gonna make a nice pale yellow. I can mix it into my green if I want to, just so I can have an idea of what the color is gonna be. And I can kind of dance around here and create where the highlights are. So here, like around this ridge, this area is very bright. It's catching the light from that window, right? It comes all the way around this way. It comes all the way around the little stem that I haven't drawn yet, right? It comes all the way like that. There's another little secondary highlight that's right here and hits this really strongly, right? So having the highlight, the green, and the shadow is what ends up making things look round. Okay, so again, using kind of a more of a feathered brush stroke and trying to grab those greens and smudge everything in there so that it looks like an even transition from one color to the next, right? And there we go. So we have that starting to form there. And then again, just like I did with the orange, where is the white and where is the black? Grabbing some clean white now. Where are those extreme highlights? Those extreme highlights are right at the top of this thing, right at where the light hits it the strongest, right just before the stem kind of comes down, and right over here in this odd little divot that catches like some secondary reflected light over here. That's where the highlights are. And then grabbing a dark color, green, mixing a little bit of black into my mixture over here. I'm gonna be like, where are the darkest of dark areas? Because if I have white on there, I need to have black. So the stem, because it's backlit, it's kind of dark, right? The area right underneath here has a bit of darkness to it. The area just behind this strawberry in this corner has a little bit of darkness to it, right? Without the light, there is no dark. So you have to make sure that everything is balanced, right? So then grabbing your green and taking that darkness and just making the transition into that darkness just a little bit softer so it's not so stark, it's not so kind of dramatic, you know. And voila, you have a pretty well thought out. Now I feel like this highlight is a little bit too weak, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my yellow and my white and my green and I'm gonna make an extraordinarily kind of bright, brilliant green color, and I'm just gonna make that stand out just a little bit more. So I'm just gonna go in here and I'm gonna be like, okay, this is the light, and the light is the way, and I am making this all work out for me. Okay, and then this is way greener, so I'm just gonna add some stronger greens here. And there you go. You got more rounded apple. Let me just give you a little bit of a how that's looking, right? Okay, so we're just dancing. Got you. And then strawberry. So strawberry is red, right? The red is deeper on this side than it is on that side. The red transitions in a way, and that has nothing to do with the lighting. It has to do with the color of the actual fruit itself, right? So we're gonna quickly just do this without narration. So I'm gonna use my red, and I'm gonna give myself a nice block color because this is the item that's in front of in front of what's behind it. And I'm just gonna give myself a nice red, right? Now the red becomes a little pinker as it gets closer to this area over here. So because pink is a value of red, I'm gonna just use a little bit of white and make this stand out. And this whole area is just a little pinker, so I'm just gonna make that whole area a little bit pinker. Again, I wanna leave a lot of paint on here because I want to be able to control what it is, where those colors are transitioning right on here. If I let the paint dry because I make the paint too thin, right? So again, I'm not worried about Chiaroscuro. I'm trying to get a base color for all the different areas that are there. This is a lot deeper at this end. So I'm gonna make this very red at the very tip and then have that kind of blend in. Okay, so there. We have beginning of strawberry, right? Now, I need to make my shadow color. So since the predominant color here is red, I am going to use the opposite color of red, the complementary color of red, which is green, right? So the shadow is again in the front. So I'm just going to take this green and I'm going to pick up this red here and I am going to make this shadowed area kind of stand out. And there's another little shadow area because this leaf comes right over here, right? Now, it looks like I put a little bit too much green. It's starting to turn umber on me. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit more red and I'm gonna massage that in, right? There's nothing that cannot be fixed. Okay, so grabbing a little bit more of now that pink that I grabbed before because this area is more pink, and taking that green that's there and I'm just gonna make sure that that transition is working nicely. Okay, so I have my main color, I have my shadows. Now, this particular fruit has seeds in it, and because the seeds are quite small, what I want to do is I want to mix my shadow color here beforehand because I don't know if I have the dexterity with my fat brush that I'm using today to kind of make that happen. So I'm gonna do this, right? And I'm gonna mix my shadow color on here, and then I'm just gonna do the little dots that I see all over this thing, bam, 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 of the seeds kind of just spreading out over the whole thing. So spreading, using that dull red color to create the little hole that the seeds are in. And they become less visible at the bottom, but they're there. Okay. And then I'm going to do my balancing of my extreme whites and my extreme blacks. Okay, so using white, nice clean white preferably, I'm going to look for those white highlights. Now the strawberry is very reflective. It's more reflective than the other fruits, and it has like little dancing highlights over this whole area around the seeds, kind of standing out, really almost going to the whole tip of it. So I'm just going to kind of dance with this all the way to the tip of this, right? And then over here there's more, and I'm going to use a little kind of like almost like a pointillism kind of mark so that I can kind of build that up. If I was using a more delicate brush, I can probably pull this off. There's a little bit of like a weird kind of like a reflected kind of highlight at the bottom over here. So I want to show that happening, right? And then just kind of dancing with the whole texture over the whole thing, right? And then if I have white, I must have black. So where is the black? Okay, so right here, I'm going to use my little bit of a watered down shadow black to show the shadow of the strawberry here. So this has a shadow right about there. It comes this way. It shows that the strawberry is kind of half floating there. This whole area from the apple forward is in shadow. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to shade the whole thing and bring the shadow forward. And then try to water it down just a little bit so that the blue underneath it shows and it doesn't look super solid. We don't want to put a super dark shadow here, right? We just want to kind of show this kind of coming forward, right? And then there. And then watering this down will have that happen. And then the leaves, right? I need a little bit of darkness on here. Right, so really like the darkest area is like right here. So I'm gonna use a little bit of that black, and I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna make a little bit of that texture right here at the bottom to balance out that texture at the top that I did with the white. And then I have a little design of the leaves. The leaves are kind of a very pale green. So because that's the main color, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix a pale green that's very close to almost white. They're not extraordinarily strong in color. And I'm just going to kind of block out their shape. So this is coming this way, that's coming that way, this is coming this way. Okay, it's a painting. It's okay to be a little bit free with your brush stroke. If you want a photograph, take a photograph. Okay, and there we go. So this is our end result, right? Trying to create all this different variation in color by using color over just using black and white. Okay, so good luck on your project. You're doing your original still lives in class, and have a good day. Bye.